In the critical shipping lanes of the Strait of Hormuz, at dawn on May 4th, the fragile peace between Iran and the United States shattered. While many observers believed Iran's recent aggression signaled a new, emboldened stance, early indications suggest the regime may have severely miscalculated. Following its alleged breach of the ceasefire, the United States swiftly responded, reportedly neutralizing Iranian naval assets in a decisive, humiliating blow. On May 4th, the war zone, alongside other outlets, reported that Operation Epic Fury appears to have reignited. The United States deployed AH-64 Apache and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters directly into the Strait of Hormuz. These aircraft engaged and destroyed small boats operated by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, known as the IRGC. While the precise number of vessels destroyed remains a point of contention, the war zone cites 6, while CBS News reported on May 5th that 7 boats were neutralized. The immediate impact is clear. This engagement marks a definitive breach of the ceasefire, a development that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of Iran's future. The immediate, targeted deployment of rotary-wing aircraft against small craft, rather than larger naval assets or fixed-wing fighters, represents a notable tactical shift. Historically, such engagements might involve naval surface combatants. This precision response highlights a doctrine focused on asymmetric threats, aiming for de-escalation through limited, decisive action. The United States asserts it had ample justification for deploying its helicopters. Officials state that the IRGC's small boats were actively threatening commercial shipping lanes within and around the Strait of Hormuz. Furthermore, U.S. Navy Admiral Brad Cooper, who leads U.S. Central Command, indicated that Iran had also targeted U.S. Navy warships. Admiral Cooper has issued a stark warning. Iran faces severe repercussions should it seek to ignite a new conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. Admiral Cooper, reporting on the latest U.S. strikes, stated, "We have an enormous amount of capability and firepower concentrated in and around the strait, including AH-64 Apache and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, used just this morning to eliminate 6 Iranian small boats threatening commercial shipping." He then delivered a clear warning. Far worse consequences await Iran if it fails to cease its aggressive actions. Cooper elaborated, "We also have A-10 Warthogs, F-15, F-16, FA-18, F-35, EA-18 Growlers, RC-135s, KC-46s, and KC-135 fixed-wing aircraft, and numerous U.S. warships, including destroyers, 2 carrier strike groups, an amphibious readiness group, and a marine expeditionary unit. The current situation stands at a critical tipping point. The United States' destruction of 6, or potentially 7, IRGC small boats could either reignite the full force of Operation Epic Fury against the regime, or, as Admiral Cooper's detailed enumeration of American military capability in the Gulf region suggests, it could serve as a singular, potent reminder to Iran that diplomacy is preferable to conflict. As IRGC, small boats were effectively transformed into unintentional submarines by America's swift response. The specific aircraft deployed by the U.S. are particularly noteworthy. While some might argue that the Apache and Seahawk represent a lower tier of air power available to the United States, these helicopters are, in fact, optimally configured to counter the persistent small boat threat Iran poses in the Strait of Hormuz and its adjacent waters. The IRGC's small boat threat has been a consistent challenge since the inception of Operation Epic Fury. Even as Iran's conventional naval capabilities were severely degraded, with numerous warships succumbing to American strikes, the asymmetric threat presented by these small boats persisted. They are swift, challenging to detect on the water, and can be easily deployed from even the most basic ports, making them both dangerous and, crucially, numerous. The Gulf International Forum reports that the IRGC maintains 20,000 personnel in its naval branch, a figure 2,000 greater than Iran's conventional navy. Of these 20,000, approximately 5,000 are specialized marine troops deployed with the fast boats. The vessels themselves include Tandar-class fast attack ships, C-14-class missile boats, and various other light craft, typically armed with launchers capable of firing short-range cruise missiles. This numerical disparity is highly unusual for a state's military structure, where conventional forces typically dominate. It underscores Iran's strategic reliance on asymmetric warfare and irregular forces, prioritizing agile, deniable tactics over traditional naval power projection. This approach significantly complicates conventional deterrence and engagement strategies. The strategy employed is straightforward. A fast boat rapidly approaches a target, unleashes its missiles, and then departs. For Iran, the primary objective is not necessarily the direct damage, though significant harm has certainly been inflicted. Instead, the core aim is the persistent threat. As long as commercial shipping companies are aware of IRGC boats patrolling, navigating the Strait of Hormuz carries immense risk. Iran's regime has achieved considerable impact with minimal resources, as these small boats have been instrumental in establishing the Hormuz blockade, now a significant challenge for global energy industries. While some may dismiss the IRGC's vessels as a mosquito fleet, the IRGC remains undeterred. Utilizing these small boats, alongside drones, the IRGC effectively conducts guerrilla warfare in a vital sea lane through which 20% of the world's oil supply typically flows during peacetime. Therefore, these small boats represent significant threats. The Apache and Seahawk helicopters serve as the United States' primary counter. Both choppers, along with the A-10 Warthogs, also deployed by the U.S. in the Strait of Hormuz, can respond rapidly to small boat attacks and possess ample firepower to neutralize these vessels. The IRGC has prioritized agility over armor and in-vessel air defenses. American helicopter and A-10 pilots have undergone extensive training for approximately 2 decades, specifically for the counterboat missions that have now resulted in the sinking of around half a dozen IRGC vessels. The Seahawk helicopters in particular possess extensive experience in this operational domain. The national interest reports their prior deployment in neutralizing small boats operated by the Houthis in the Red Sea. That militant group receives Iranian backing, and the tactics now observed in the Strait of Hormuz bear a strong resemblance to the intermittent Houthi activities in the Red Sea over several years. Armed helicopters, generally, are ideally suited for this type of mission. They can launch rapidly from land bases or from warships positioned at sea. These warships can strategically station themselves near suspected threat zones, such as the Hormuz transit paths, thereby minimizing the response time required for a helicopter to engage a small boat threat. When equipped with anti-ship munitions, such as the new laser-guided Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System 2 rockets, now being integrated into American helicopters and aircraft, these aerial platforms can effectively counter entire swarms of fast boats. The deployment of fighter jets and more advanced airframes is currently deemed unnecessary for these specific engagements. Such assets would be reserved for strikes within Iran itself should the current events in the Strait of Hormuz escalate to fully reignite Operation Epic Fury. Iran has expressed strong displeasure regarding these developments. The BBC reports that Iranian state media has already begun to dispute U.S. claims regarding the number of IRGC small boats struck. Iran, instead, asserts that the United States only managed to destroy a pair of small civilian cargo vessels, resulting in the deaths of 5 civilians. The veracity of these counterclaims remains unconfirmed. These assertions originate from Iran's state broadcaster, IRIB, which quotes an anonymous Iranian military commander stating that Tehran's regime has initiated its own investigation into the U.S. attacks on IRGC vessels to reach its conclusions. Al Jazeera reports that the U.S. military has not yet responded to these accusations. Iran's regime and its state media possess significant motivation to disseminate propaganda suggesting the U.S. is targeting commercial ships rather than IRGC small boats. Additionally, a key reason the IRGC employs small boats is their inherent difficulty in being distinguished from innocent civilian craft. This tactic provides plausible deniability, and Iran may be attempting to misrepresent the loss of some of its vessels, which contribute to the Hormuz blockade, as something entirely different. Tensions are escalating, nearing a point where the entire Iran war ceasefire could collapse. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz has demonstrably worsened. However, a crucial question arises. Why did the United States attack the IRGC's small boats initially? Iran is attempting to portray itself as an innocent victim in these events, but the underlying facts present a starkly different picture. Iran seeks to convey the impression that the United States unilaterally broke the ceasefire without provocation. This is not the case. The reality is that Iran initiated hostilities, driven by the regime's displeasure over a U.S. announcement to take further steps to ensure safe transit for commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. On May 3rd, U.S. President Donald Trump utilized his Truth Social platform to announce the United States' intentions regarding the Hormuz blockade. President Trump stated that nations globally, many uninvolved in the broader Middle East conflict, had approached the U.S. requesting assistance to free their ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump declared, "For the good of Iran, the Middle East, and the United States, we have told these countries that we will guide their ships safely out of these restricted waterways, so that they can freely and ably get on with their business." The U.S. President framed this initiative as a humanitarian gesture beneficial to all parties, including Iran. With this announcement, a new operation, Project Freedom, was set to commence. The use of a personal social media platform by a sitting U.S. president to announce a significant military-backed international initiative, Project Freedom, marks a departure from traditional diplomatic and defense communication channels. This method bypasses formal declarations, potentially creating ambiguity while directly engaging a specific political base. Iran reacted with clear disapproval. Despite President Trump's assertions that this new project would benefit Iran equally with other nations, the Iranian regime swiftly countered, claiming continued control over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran maintains that the U.S. possesses no right to provide escorts or assistance to merchant vessels subject to the Iranian blockade. Iranian Major General Ali Abdullahi further asserted that the U.S. cannot act unilaterally, stating that any safe passage through Hormuz must be coordinated with Iran under all circumstances, as reported by the BBC. Other Iranian officials were equally swift to criticize Project Freedom. Iranian lawmaker Ibrahim Azizi contended that the U.S. risked violating the ceasefire with this new initiative, adding that the Strait of Hormuz is not a place for rhetoric and that the Gulf region would not be managed by Trump's delusional posts. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, amplified the criticism, declaring, "Project Freedom is Project Deadlock," in a post on X. Clearly, Iran has rejected Project Freedom. However, the subsequent events surprised many. Apparently not content with merely expressing its disapproval of President Trump's new proposal, Iran's regime seemingly preempted what it perceived as a potential ceasefire breach by, in fact, breaking the ceasefire itself. On May 4th, both South Korea and the United Arab Emirates reported attacks on their merchant ships within the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE additionally reported that Iran had attacked its oil port in Fujairah, resulting in a fire. Suddenly, the rationale behind the American Apache and Seahawk helicopters targeting IRGC small boats became evident. This was not a random warning shot intended to compel Iran to retreat from its anger over Project Freedom. This was a direct response, a retaliatory action. An act by the United States designed to demonstrate that it will respond to any IRGC attacks in the Strait of Hormuz with such speed that the vessels launching those attacks will be neutralized and sunk before they can inflict serious damage. Now, the entire world watches with bated breath. Are we witnessing the reignition of a broader conflict, or merely a temporary setback on the path to peace? America's robust response to the Iranian regime's aggression indicates that Project Freedom is unlikely to be abandoned soon. As Admiral Cooper's comments underscored, far from retreating, the U.S. has reaffirmed its extensive military presence in the Gulf, encompassing the helicopters already in use, fighter jets, and numerous warships. However, the U.S. is also maintaining a degree of secrecy regarding the precise activities of Project Freedom in the aftermath of Iran's attacks and the initial American response. When questioned about whether the U.S. is now protecting ports in the UAE as part of Project Freedom, Admiral Cooper stated, "I don't want to give the details of what we're protecting and what we're not. I wouldn't want to tip our hand on that, but in the case of the Fujairah attack, I'd really refer to the UAE on that." This indicates limited information emerging from U.S. military leadership. Nevertheless, President Trump may have offered some insight into the future direction of Project Freedom. In his May 4th Truth Social declaration concerning the U.S. destruction of 7 IRGC small boats, Trump also notably mentioned South Korea. He stated, "Iran has taken some shots at unrelated nations with respect to the ship movement, Project Freedom, including a South Korean cargo ship. Perhaps it's time for South Korea to come and join the mission." This comment is significant. While purely speculative at this juncture, it suggests the U.S. might be aiming to lead a multinational mission in the Strait of Hormuz, rather than bearing sole responsibility for ensuring the safety of commercial ships in the waterway. Could this signal the formation of an alliance to reopen Hormuz? That remains to be seen, and it is worth noting that The Independent reported on May 5th that South Korea was indeed reviewing the possibility of joining Project Freedom. However, this prospect is tempered by the fact that South Korea is also investigating the cause of the fire on the cargo vessel reportedly struck by the IRGC, as it has not yet been officially confirmed that the blaze resulted from external factors. As is frequently the case with the Gulf conflict, predicting the next development remains challenging. This uncertainty applies equally to the status of the ceasefire and the future of Project Freedom. One might assume that Iran's attacks on cargo vessels and oil ports, coupled with the U.S. response of sinking IRGC small boats, would definitively signal the end of the ceasefire. Perhaps it has, but perhaps it has not. As CNN reported on May 5th, President Trump has issued strong warnings, stating that Iranian forces would be blown off the face of the earth if they target U.S. ships in the Gulf region. However, he has refrained from explicitly declaring the ceasefire over. White House reporter Jonathan Karl also observes that the ceasefire has not yet formally concluded, as Trump stopped short of stating that Operation Epic Fury is back in full swing during a May 4th phone conversation where he detailed the incidents involving the Emirati and South Korean merchant ships. The situation remains highly ambiguous. However, this is often characteristic when two nations attempt to navigate peace talks while simultaneously engaging in mutual threats. So, regarding the Iran conflict, what can we state with certainty? We know that U.S. destroyers are present in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM confirmed this in a May 4th X post, stating, U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers are currently operating in the Arabian Gulf after transiting the Strait of Hormuz in support of Project Freedom. The same post noted that a pair of U.S. merchant vessels had successfully navigated Hormuz under Project Freedom. However, Admiral Cooper clarified that while U.S. warships are present, they are not providing specific escorts. He explained, "If I just describe this overall, if you're escorting a ship, you're playing kind of one-on-one. I think we have a much better defensive arrangement in this process, where we have multiple layers that include ships, helicopters, aircraft, airborne early warning, electronic warfare. We have a much broader defensive package than you would have ever had if you were just escorting." This provides further insight into the operational framework of Project Freedom. It will not solely be U.S. warships confronting the IRGC, but also the aircraft and helicopters these warships deploy, a reality the IRGC's small boat captains have now experienced firsthand. In the interim, President Trump is issuing warnings, and the U.S. military buildup in the Gulf appears to be resuming. During a May 4th speech, Trump stated of Iran, "They have no navy, they have no air force, they have no anti-aircraft equipment, they have no radar, they have no nothing. They have no leaders, actually. The leaders happen to be gone also." This serves as an unsubtle reminder to Iran of the significant damage the U.S. has inflicted upon the country's military over recent months. Trump also asserted, during an interview with Fox News, that the U.S. possesses more weapons and ammunition at a much higher grade than we had before. It remains unclear whether Trump is comparing the contemporary U.S. military to its past, or if he is indicating an increased shipment of hardware to the Gulf. Regardless, it constitutes another direct threat. Iran must back down now, or the destruction of half a dozen small boats and the interception of cruise missiles by American forces will merely be the beginning. It also appears the U.S. is consulting with Israel to determine its subsequent actions. This is according to Israel Hayom, which cites 3 sources familiar with the matter claiming that the two countries are holding feverish consultations on how to respond and assist their loyal ally, seemingly referring to the UAE. Options reportedly under discussion include targeted strikes against Iranian launchers and other military targets posing a threat to the Strait of Hormuz, alongside a possible attack against an Iranian energy facility as a direct response to Iran's strike at Fujairah. As for Iran, it has already issued its own warning. We are just getting started. Foreign Minister Arachi has adopted a slightly more diplomatic stance, stating on X that events in Hormuz make clear that there's no military solution to a political crisis, while cautioning the U.S. against being dragged back into a quagmire by ill-wishers. This could be interpreted as a subtle jab at Israel. Regardless, Arachi appears to be attempting to redirect the situation towards diplomatic negotiations rather than further escalation in Hormuz. However, the efficacy of this approach remains uncertain, given the U.S. apparent commitment to Project Freedom and the IRGC's renewed attacks on merchant ships in the Gulf. What we have just witnessed could be a mere blip on the path to peace, or it could prove to be the catalyst that fully relaunches Operation Epic Fury. The developments over the next couple of days will be absolutely crucial. For now, the sight of half a dozen sunken small boats stands as stark evidence that the United States is prepared for the next phase, should it become necessary. And if Operation Epic Fury does indeed restart, there is one unexpected nation that could emerge as a significant difference-maker in the Strait of Hormuz: Ukraine, reportedly ready to undertake a major initiative to reopen the strait, a development not even anticipated by the United States.